Hey friends! Welcome to a very special edition of Chapterbook Storytime with Dave. That's me. Today we're going to take a small break from The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. You can expect part 2 of that later. But today I want to read the first 2 chapters of a book called Ban This Book by a fella named Alan Gratz. Just a little bit of backstory here. I promise I'll try not to bore you too much. Alan Gratz is the author of about a dozen books for middle grade readers, upper elementary, middle school, and they're mostly historical fiction. But I was talking to my uncle last month, my Uncle Mark, who's a retired history professor, and he said, "Hey David, have you ever heard of a fella named Alan Gratz? You being working with kids' books and all?" And I said, "Yeah, that name rings a bell." And he said, "Well, Alan Gratz is a former student of mine." And I thought, wow, how about that? Small world, you know. So Mark was telling me about some of Alan Gratz's books, and I started looking into them, and I stumbled across this one, Ban This Book, which is a novel about banned and challenged books for 4th, 5th grade reading level. And I was like, wow, that is right up my alley. And National Banned Books Week is coming up. It only makes too much sense for me to read this right now. So I did. And I loved it. It was so good. It ticked all the right boxes. It hits so squarely home. And then I told Elizabeth Sensabaugh, our library director, I said, "Dude, you gotta check this book out. You gotta read this. It is so good." And she did. She took my recommendation. All right, yay. And if you haven't watched it yet, I would invite you to put me on pause and check out the review that Elizabeth just did of this book a few days ago. So let's take a second and pause. Okay, are you back? Have you watched the video? Good. Now we can continue. So as I said, I'm going to read just the first 2 chapters, which are not very long, of Ban This Book by Alan Gratz. Which he has lovingly dedicated to librarians everywhere. Thanks, dude. Chapter 1. The Mystery of the Missing Book. It all started the day my favorite book went missing from the library. I didn't know it was missing, not yet. In my mind, it was still sitting there all alone on the shelf like a kid in the cafeteria, waiting for her one and only friend to come and find her, waiting for me to come find her. All I wanted to do was run to the library and check out my favorite book before homeroom, but Rebecca, my one and only real-life friend, was still talking about trademarking our names. "Have you ever thought about registering amyannollinger.com?" Rebecca asked me. "No, Rebecca. I have never thought about registering amyannollinger.com. I am 9 years old. Why in the world would I bother to register a website with my name on it when my parents won't even let me use Facebook yet?" That's what I thought about saying. But what I actually said was, no. "Well, you should," Rebecca told me. "You've got a unique name, but even so, somebody could register it. And then what would you do? RebeccaZimmerman.com is already gone. I'm 10 years old, and already my future intellectual property is being snapped up. Jay-Z and Beyonce trademarked their baby's name less than a month after she was born. You'd think my parents would have known enough to do the same for me." Rebecca's parents were both lawyers, and she wanted to be one too when she grew up. I couldn't imagine a more boring job. But instead I just said, yeah. I was still itching to get to the library and check out my favorite book. I opened my locker to stuff my backpack inside and gave my mailbox a quick look. Nobody knows how it got started, but everybody at Shelburne Elementary has these cardboard boxes taped to the inside door of their lockers, just below the little vents they put on there in case you get stuffed in your locker by a bully. If you want to leave a note for somebody, you just slip the piece of paper in the slot and it falls right into the little cardboard box. It's such a tradition that Mr. Crutchfield, the custodian, just leaves the boxes in the lockers from year to year. As usual, my mailbox was empty, which I'd expected. My one and only friend doesn't believe in writing notes. Never leave a paper trail, Rebecca says. More advice from her lawyer parents. Did you hear about Morgan Freeman, the actor? Rebecca asked. Somebody who wasn't named Morgan Freeman registered his name at morganfreeman.com. And he had to sue them to get it back. Now that's an interesting case. I can't imagine anything less interesting, Rebecca. I don't care anything about trademarks or registering domain names. I have to go check out my favorite book before somebody else does. That's what I wanted to tell her. But instead, I held up a handful of books like a shield and I just said, I have to return these books to the library before class. And I backed away before she could tell me any more about that court case. I'll see you in homeroom, I called. Normally, I would already have my favorite book checked out and in my backpack, but our librarian, Mrs. Jones, has a rule that you can only check out a new book 2 times in a row. And then it has to sit on the shelf for 5 whole school days before you can check it out again. She says it's to make sure other people get a chance to read it, but I think she made that rule up just to make me read other books, which I would have done anyway. I dumped last night's books in the book return and waved good morning to Mrs. Jones on the way to the fiction shelves. Oh, Amy Ann, Mrs. Jones called. Honey, wait. Just let me grab my book, I called. I turned to the H through N shelves and hurried to where I knew my favorite book would be waiting for me. Only, it wasn't there. I looked again. It still wasn't there. I looked behind the books, in case it had gotten pushed back and was hidden behind the others like they sometimes do, but no. It really wasn't there. But my favorite book was always on the shelf. Could somebody else have really checked it out? I was about to go and ask Mrs. Jones when she turned down the row. Mrs. Jones is a big white lady with short brown hair and rhinestone granny glasses that hang around her neck on a chain when she isn't reading. Today, she was wearing a red dress with white polka dots. Polka dots are kind of her thing. Where's my book? I asked her. That's what I was trying to tell you, honey, Mrs. Jones said. I knew you'd come for it first thing. Well, it's been 5 days, I told her. I marked it down on my calendar. I get to check it out again after 5 days. You said so. Did somebody else check it out? No, Amy Ann. No, I had to take it off the shelf. I frowned. Take it off the shelf? What does that mean? Take it off the shelf. Why? Mrs. Jones sighed and wrung her hands. She looked like she was about to tell me one of my dogs died. Because some parents got together and said they didn't think it was appropriate for elementary school, and the school board agreed with them. Wasn't inappropriate? What does that mean? It means that I can't check it out to you, honey, or to anybody else. Not until I talk to the school board and get this nonsense overturned. It means, Amy Ann, that your favorite book has been banned from the school library. Chapter 2. Did I just say that? I felt like the carpet under my feet was turning into quicksand and I was sinking fast. I grabbed hold of the bookshelves so I wouldn't fall over. But it isn't inappropriate. It's very appropriate. It's a great book. It's my favorite book. I know, honey. I agree. Nobody but your parents has the right to tell you what books you can and can't read. I promise you, I'm going to fight this. But in the meantime, I have to abide by what the school board decides or I could lose my job. All I could do was nod. I felt like crying, which was stupid. It was like somebody come into my bedroom and taken my stuff without asking, which was even more stupid because it was a library book. Library books belong to everyone. You can help get it back, Amy Ann, Mrs. Jones said. I wiped a tear from my cheek. How? There's going to be a school board meeting Thursday night, and I'm going to be there to tell them all how wrong they are. It'd be even better if they heard it from you. My eyes went wide. Me? Just to hear why you like that book so much would mean a lot, I think. I swallowed hard. Are you crazy, Mrs. Jones? Me? Get up in front of a bunch of adults and tell them why that book is my favorite? Do you have polka dots on the brain? I can't do that. That's what I wanted to say. Instead, what I actually said was, okay. Now, if you think that everything got resolved after Mrs. Jones and Amy Ann went to the school board meeting that night, you will be deliciously mistaken. No, it takes a full novel's worth of time and many ensuing shenanigans, which are fantastic, for this novel to come to conclusion. And the only way you'll find out how that happens is if you check out the book. So give us a call at 731-3621 if you are interested in read this Ban This Book by Alan Gratz. And a big thank you to my Uncle Mark for recommending Alan Gratz to me. And a thank you to Elizabeth Sensabaugh, our director, for also agreeing how fantastic this book is and making her video. Again, if you haven't checked that out, please do so. And a big thank you to Alan Gratz for writing this wonderful piece of kid literary fiction, and for having libraries' backs. National Banned Book Week is coming up at the end of the month. Free people read freely. Y'all take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time.